Hey, everybody, this is Brian Beckham, and I have got Rob Roy. Rob Roy is a veteran of SEAL Team 6, and he is the founder and the CEO of Trident Coaching and Consulting. Rob, we were talking right before the show. You were literally the perfect guest for my show. I mean, you're ex-military, you teach leadership. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
imagine a perfect guest. So I'm really, really thankful for you coming on the show, and I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to it. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic, and we're willing to share some wisdom I've learned over all these years.
Nice. Well, I know I would be remiss if I didn't start right out of the chute asking you about SEAL Team 6. I mean, everybody that I know thinks that's one of the coolest things ever. So I tell you what, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, where you came from, a little bit about your experience in SEAL Team 6.
Okay, I can summarize it because I'm older, so it's a little bit of yarn, as they say. Raised in Milwaukee, born in Mississippi, raised in Milwaukee. Had a troubled background, a lot of trauma when I was growing up. Had a way out in 1976 to go to um, a suburban school and saw that opportunity, right? There's an opportunity out there to do things. And when I was in the city, I didn't see that. I didn't see that there was, nothing more than 3 blocks away from where I lived. And I lived like that in a very survival mentality, not dog eat dog, but definitely survival. I knew where not to go. And when I went out to suburban school, I found that that didn't exist and that there are things out there that I could actually do. And so that opened my eyes up to joining the military. I think it's one of the few options I had, either go back to where I lived or go join the military. So I joined the Navy. Didn't know much about traveling, airplanes, buses, all that stuff that people take for granted nowadays. And this is
Yeah.
before the internet. I did 4 years in the regular Navy, as they say, as a fleet sailor. Uh, One of the defining moments of my life when I saw death for the first time in that environment was when on the USS Nimitz, plane crash, killed a bunch of people, changed the Navy's policy on drugs and everything. I decided I didn't want to do that. Went over to Spain. I was in Spain for probably a year and a half and ran into a guy. There's a couple of series of things that happened, but basically I ran into somebody that said, you should become a Navy SEAL. I didn't know what Navy SEAL was. Gave me a bunch of bum gouge, guy named Clark Cummings, about not working out, not getting ready. And I think what he meant to tell me was don't overtrain before you go. And I took it as drink as much as you want to, and then go to the program and you'll get in shape. So
Yeah.
I think there's a miscommunication with what his don't train and my don't train meant. But I went to Buds, so it became a Nobel Hell Week, which is class 147. There's 13 originals and that 28 people that actually made it through the program. Original means that you started on day one and you ended on a day of graduation. There's 13 of us.
How many started out in your class?
117. So
Wow.
I would say a mislabeling, but you can start with 117 and then people roll into your class at different phases, 3 phases. And people can roll into your class. So that number actually goes way above 117 from the beginning. People roll into your first phase class, people roll into your second phase class, people roll into your third phase class. And nowadays they roll into your SQT for one reason or another. They got injured or they got set back for testing, but they can roll into your class. And some, for our class, we had like 25 guys roll into our second phase class, and we had another 20 people roll into our first phase class. But, out of all those people, let's say those 200 people, still 13 of us graduated, originals that started and ended, which is a testament to our own individual drive and determination to be successful, as opposed to the program said this is the magic 13 or the baker's dozen. With SEAL Team 2, did winter warfare. I've always strived to do the things that people didn't think I could do, or to do things that weren't expected of me. And so I went to a winter warfare platoon, spent learned how to ski, snowboard, cross country, all that stuff. And every time I came across something, I was like, this is different, this is new, and it's exciting. Um, and how do I use this to my advantage? How do I become a better operator using these new skills? Celestial navigation, I got that out of there as well. Maritime interdiction stuff, I got all those things as well. Of course, the land warfare, winter warfare, those things are jungle warfare. I got all those when I was in the SEAL teams. But I was given another opportunity. Someone said, you should screen for SEAL Team 6. And I had already been in the Navy 4 years as a regular sailor and then 2 years as a SEAL, or 2 years as a a new SEAL, doing my third year. And I didn't do it because I didn't know, no internet back then. So it was in its infancy. So I didn't know that much about it. I just knew that they were the best of the best. When I'll be, blunt with you, there's a little bit of imposter theory that was going on with me is I didn't think I was
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah.
Right. These are guys that you hear about are the NFL guys. I'm playing high school football and they're like, hey, you can go to the NFL. I was like, that's a bit of a reach. So I waited a year and I applied for it the next year, got picked up, went over there. And then there was just a whirlwind of, let me put it this way. The best way I can put it is if you're at a SEAL team and you're like in your perception of your own mind, this is what mine was. I felt that was when I first checked on board, I met guys that were like these godlike figures that knew everything, that could run faster, that could do just unbelievable things that I thought that I was when I graduated BUD/S. I was like, no one can beat me running, no one can beat me on course. I'm fast, and I'm young. I get over there and I'm in the back. Like I'm so embarrassed about being in the back because these old guys are crushing us and they're talking to you while they're crushing you, which is even, salt in the wound.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were
Sure.
just hammering you and passing you. It took about a year to get back up to where I was one of the old guys that was there. And I wanted to be one of the old guys when guys checked on board the command and go, you go see Rob, right?
Yeah.
And then I would be like, yeah, welcome to my team. And
Yeah.
became one of the top dogs at the team. And I don't mean operation. I mean like at the team, just one of the guys that you would go to, one of the old guys back then that you would go to. And there's still people that were there that were above me that respected me, that I respected. And I knew my place, right? I knew that I wasn't the top dog, but I was at that level I was at. I was I was number one. So the reason I say that is because when you're in that kind of environment, you feel that you're the moon, right, in the sky at night, that no stars, everybody else is a star. You just can't see them because you're burning so bright like the moon. And then you get selected to go to dev group, and there's a transition that you're just a star in a Milky Way.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of guys that are up there that are kicking ass and taking names, and you're just trying to maintain your orbit around them. And I think everybody like that there. You can't pick one star off from the other. They're all bright, they're all brilliant, they all have different colors, but they are the star. And people see those because there is no moon that replaces it. You're just in the Milky Way somewhere. And so going over there, it was another eye opening, another um, challenge to what I was already experiencing. And I did a lot of great things I did for 10 years. I was talking about this today with somebody, and I said, the problem with being in a place like that is that you don't know what the real world is. It's such a dome. You're 45-minute call away from an hour actually from JSOC telling you to go do a mission. So you're on a recall. You got to be ready to go when they call you. You get all the best equipment, you get the best money, you got the best people that work with you. No one has to be told what to do. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. So you're prepared for all missions. So you're 45 minutes away from getting on the plane and going anywhere in the world and completing a mission and coming back home.
At all
I
times,
can't,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I
it's like
can't.
being on alert,
It is
essentially, right?
alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
sections of it. You're not like that 365 days a year. You're like that for like 13 weeks,
Yeah.
right? So then you go into another. You got a training, you got a workup, and all those things. I can't get into those, but you're only like that for about 13 weeks. You're at the tip of the spear for 13 weeks, and then you wind down and you wind back up because nobody can stay that way. I mean, you're still on a recall, but the firemen are on a recall, but they got to put their boots on to get the truck going, and they're going to figure out where they got to go, and they go put out the fire. Well, they're not like that. They're ready to go at the drop of a hat. Everybody there
Yeah.
is ready to go. All the support people, all the operators, and there's not that many operators there, but they're ready to go at the drop of a hat. It's a very high tempo, high pace that you become addicted to. When a normal person watches television about something happens, they're like, "Oh, that's not a big deal." But when a guy at Def Group watches that, or Delta, or the Marine, what they call it, the Rangers, second bat, or any of the other special operations team to work out of JSOC, they're watching because it's news informing them about what could possibly happen in the next 24 to 72 hours. So
Yeah.
you're on it, weather patterns, everything matters to you. It has a lot more visceral take and so you do that for 10 years and you're like, what's my life?
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
what is my real life? And I A guy asked me today, actually, we were talking about, and so why did you leave? And I said, because, and I don't know if I could talk about this stuff, but I was doing a detail. Can't tell you what exactly I was doing, but I was doing something in a museum with a dignitary, and I realized that that's not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. You know,
Yeah.
just like a poof. I
Yeah.
like art, but I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to see art because I'm, busy doing what I'm doing with this specific person. And from there, I just couldn't get it out of my head. I need to leave. I need to do something else. I love what I love, love, love what I was doing. I love the guys I was hanging out with. I love the competition. I love the training. I love the money that we got, and no additional monies. But as far as like your equipment and your training, I loved all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you have your challenges. Your promotions are slower. Your advancements are slower. I mean, they're fast compared to the rest of the fleet. But when you're waiting to be the number one person of your team, you're going to wait because that job doesn't open up until that person leaves.
Yeah.
And if that person doesn't leave, you're not going to get that job within that command. There's only so many jobs, there's only leadership roles within that command, and you're waiting. And you may wait as a subordinate for 5 years to get that job that you're only going to have for 18 months to 2 years until you move up to the next rank. The way the military works, right?
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
that it in the officer community, it's in our army, I think it's every 2 years, 3 years. In the Navy, you can probably stay there 3 years. But if you don't become like a senior chief or master chief, you can stay there for 10 or 15 years as enlisted. As an officer, you're going to do your stint there, maybe 3 or 4 years you'll be there, and then you got to move on. So you got to
Yeah.
get what you get while you're there, right? And that job has to be available and open to you while you're there. Um, but being a knuckle dragger is great. It's a fantastic job to have. A knuckle dragger being a person that does operational stuff, not somebody that's an idiot.
Yeah.
I really did love it, and I missed the opportunities of the stuff that I did when I was there, and stuff that I could be able to do, and the training I could get while I was there. But you know, I did realize that I would not leave there if I didn't leave when I left.
Boy,
I
that's
just,
so interesting you'd say
yeah.
that. I have a couple stories I'll tell you. So
Hmm.
as it relates to what you were talking about, being on alert status, where you got to
Hmm.
be ready to go in 45 minutes. When I was younger, my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He flew
Hmm.
200 combat missions over Vietnam, including the
Hmm.
very last combat mission, Linebacker 2, Distinguished Flying Cross, and then he
Hmm.
transitioned into Air Force intelligence. And
Hmm.
I remember we would go to my brother and I were very young. We would go to the base movie theater. I don't know if it was like this where you were, but they would have a whole section reserved on the front of every movie theater. All the front seats were for all the guys in reserve, and they would literally, or on alert. And if they were on alert at the time, they would come to the movie theater in their flight suit because they had to be wheels
Ready to
up in
go.
like 30 minutes. Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. They had to get the
Yeah.
planes up off the air. And I remember Rob being at movie theaters in the middle of a movie, and all of a sudden, 20 guys in flight suits in the front of the movie just get up and leave. And
Yeah.
so you like that's what you're talking about. But I tell you, you
Yeah.
said something interesting when you were talking about the training, which was that uh, you had some self doubt even after making it through Buds. And so for
Oh yeah.
people that don't know, Buds is the training program for the Navy SEALs.
Mhm.
And how did you? It seems to me it seems like if you make it through something like SEAL training, maybe you don't ever have any self doubt. But you said
Bro.
even after going through that, you're kind of laughing at me now. I've been a trial lawyer for 25
Yeah.
years. I
Yeah.
still have self doubt before every single
Yeah.
trial I go into,
Yes.
and it's kind of actually it kind of makes me feel good to know that a badass Navy SEAL like yourself, you even had some self doubt when you went out for SEAL Team Six. So talk a little bit about how you dealt with that self doubt and what you tell others, whether it's in the corporate world or the military world, when they have self doubt about whether they can do something. How do you teach them to deal with those kind of emotions?
Well, it's more in line with imposter theory, right? The imposter
Yeah.
theory that you don't feel like you belong there, right? You've done everything you did, but it's more, and it's not I guess I would say it's not a self-esteem thing, right? It's like, oh, I'm such a shitbag, I shouldn't be with these guys. It's more in like you're saying, it's like before a trial or before you do anything, it's like, I don't know if I can actually do this. It's a hum that's in the back of your head. Not like I can't take this shot,
Yeah.
right? Like that's not there. I got to take a shot, perform, get it done. But it's when you're sitting back and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to be here because I don't know if I can keep up with these guys. Even though you are and you're performing well, you're either in the middle of the pack or in front of the pack because someone's always going to be in the back of the pack. But to be at the top, when you get to that point where you're at the front, you still have this self doubt about who, what you just did. You don't go, did they let me win? But you think, what do I need to do to stay above all these guys? Because I don't know if I can keep up with these guys, and everybody's like that. How do you deal with it? My thing was to train harder, to make sure nothing was missed, to take notes on my performance, to reflect on what I've done so far. And this is every time I felt that. I'd have to reflect on what I've done in the past and what it took for me to get there. And then that helped me get out the door. It's like public speaking, right? People's number one fear is to go out on the stage. And I always say to myself, there's no one's better at this than me. Like I know my message. I know who I am. Now I'm going to go out there and tell these folks. That's kind of what my mantra when I go out there. And then you just do, it's kind of hard to say sometimes. You're a lawyer, it's like sometimes you just get out there and you just start talking, and then your natural ability, your self-confidence comes out while you're speaking. I don't know if you ever get this, but there's like not an out-of-body experience, but there's a disassociation of you can see yourself saying the words you're saying while you're saying those words. It's called disassociation because you're like, okay, I'm talking and I'm also saying what I'm saying, but I'm also observing myself outside. That sounds so weird when I say it out loud. I'm observing myself.
This is great. I love this. I've had this experience myself personally, and I know a lot of our listeners have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, I played basketball in college, played at a pretty high level in high school. I played in front of 20,000 fans, probably 10, 15 times. And it was kind of the same thing. I'd be so nervous before the game. I'd be overthinking everything. And then when you get out there, something takes over. You're in a flow state. It's the same thing when I give speeches or, speak to juries. The night before is terrible. Like, I hate the night before. I'm sitting there going, am I going to be able to say the words? Am I going to mess up? Am I going to have sweat dripping off of my forehead? Am I going to look? Yeah, seriously. But then I find once I get started, I mean, it's phenomenal how you describe that. Once you get started, it's just like
it's a flow.
It's a flow state.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think you can only get that way if you trained for it, if you prepared for it. A gentleman asked me the other day, he goes, what do you do when you speak? And I said, I usually walk out there and I have 4 words. He's like, 4 words? I said, yeah, it's 4 words. I learned, now I'll tell you a quick story how I know this. When I first started my company, the first one was SOT-G, and I would have these corporate events, and I would, typical military get out, got to be in a uniform. So I had to have my tie on, and I was speaking to them very, like I was taught.
Yeah.
Very regimented. This is a PowerPoint and we had team. I was like team building with the leadership stuff, and we did a team building event. And I'm out there. It's not the person on the stage, but I was the person that does this for real in the field. And they were like, cool. They were into it, and I was like, well, they're really getting into this. I don't know why they didn't like the speech. So we came back late from where we were at. We were at a hotel, and we went down the street to a park, and we came. It was like probably like 400 people. We come back, go inside, and I was telling my point of contact for the company that I'm not going to have everybody change because we're going to get behind schedule. I'm just going to go ahead and brief them like this in my sweats, and then leave everybody in their sweats, and we'll just go from here if that's okay with you. So yeah, no problem at all. So I get on the stage, no PowerPoint, right? I had 2 points I needed to make, and I didn't have a screen or anything. I get up there and I go through this, stepped into the flow. I stepped into who I was, stepped into that skin that I have. They were like, there's a standing ovation. I was like, for what? I just gave you a look. Breathe. I walk off and the guy goes, Rob, I've been watching you for the last couple of days. You should never have a PowerPoint and you should never use notes. So you're a natural speaker. And so since then, I've never used a PowerPoint. I mean, I have PowerPoints now for pictures in the background, so some visual reference to what I'm talking about, but I don't pay attention to it. I'm not pulled in by it. And I usually have 4 words I'm going to communicate to people when I'm speaking. 4 words, big 4 words. and they're in flow of what I'm going to talk about for that day. Because that's what keeps me on track. I know I can talk about it for 12 to 15 minutes, and then I open myself up for questions at the end. So that's what I do now. And I think a lot of it is the training I got when I was at Def Group, because we used to brief people all the time. And then turning that message into how a civilian, because you're trying to convince people in the military, right? You're trying to convince people, but you're in the civilian sector, you're trying to show them that this is a better methodology of doing something. And they can only get that by listening to you. Where in the military, they have to be there. Civilians don't have to be there. So I'm not trying to convince you this is good for you. I'm saying this is good for you because this is what I believe in. This is the path. This is going to help you help your organization. And it's all about people. You show that passion. And you can't put passion on a PowerPoint. You can only do that by who you are as an individual, by a person. And so that's what I learned from that experience a long time ago. And that's what, when I go out speaking, that's what I'm speaking from passion about, working with people. And it's difficult because when you're leading people or you're talking to people, not everybody has that compassion for the people that work for them. You're looking at something like, if I'm an owner of a company, I want you to produce for me. But if your job is just to produce, what are you doing for them to produce? How are you growing your people? And then getting the results of that growth from them. If you can't put that on an axis and say, what am I doing here for them to grow and make me more money here? That's not going to happen because, at the end of the day, your people are more important than whatever hardware you have because they're the ones that produce it. They're the ones that sell your company. They're the ones that have your brand. They're the ones that bleed your company colors. If you got those
Amen.
people out there,
Amen.
yeah,
Amen.
yeah,
Amen. I've been
yeah,
telling people, Rob, for 10
yeah,
years, a lot of lawyers, they say, most important thing are my clients. And I say, not me. Most
yeah,
important thing are the people that work with me
yeah.
because they're going to be with me the whole time. The clients come and go. And also, by the way,
Mhm.
if the people that work with me are happy and motivated and feel like they have a fulfilling career and have a little
Yeah.
autonomy, I'm going to do a better job for the clients anyway, right?
And it's
So,
easier,
yeah,
right?
it's easier. Yeah,
It's
that's
easier
right.
because they know what
That's
you
right.
want, right?
Yeah.
It's there waiting for you, right?
Yeah.
It's not a my staff or I always tell my staff, I always give them kudos when we do these things. I said, yeah, I couldn't do this without them. I could not be able to perform. And I say, I caveat it by saying, yeah, I'm good at what I do, but I'm so much better with them. My life is so much easier having them here. Of course, they don't want to be up here for 45 minutes or if I'm doing a 1 day event for 6 hours. I can't do the 6 hours unless my staff knows what's going to happen next. And they read my body language or what's happening. When I'm getting tired, they bring me stuff or they go, hey, you need to do this or that. And I take immediate feedback while at the end of the event, I'll take on a 6 hour um like a team building event for the day where it's 2 hours of leadership, team building, communication, that kind of a brief. And then it goes into like an actual activity that shows you what we just talked about. And then you kind of grasp it and then you come bring back. And then we may do an employee plan of how you develop people. And then we'll send you out and do another. So you go back and forth with it. Small groups. Um, I couldn't do what I do unless my team was there to know what's next, to understand what I want to have happen for the client. Like there's a relationship with you and your team, and then there's a relationship with you and your team and the client. My relationship goes with my team, and then our relationship goes to the client. It's what we represent, who we are, and how we dress in our uniform and what we say. Because most of the people, I would say 80% of the 90% of the people that work with me are military. They either prior service or retired, because when you do a commander's intent, right? What's the commander's intent for this particular mission we're doing? We call them missions. What's the commander's intent? This is the commander's intent for this mission. Everybody gets it. Everybody understands it. And what are the flow of communications? Who's in charge? How we're going to execute this? We use mission planning and we do brief backs, right? We do warning
Yes.
orders. We do all that stuff. But if a civilian, and we try to teach this to some of the companies we work with, and say, but if they're on board with your mission, they understand what the mission is, they understand what the commander's intent, the rest of it's easy because
Yeah.
you've given them all the tools they need. And then of course it's hiring, right? Like I don't have anything against HR, but it's kind of like they get in the way of
Yeah.
a successful team.
Yeah.
I was talking to a guy today, and I said, why can't the people that work with him This guy is he's a low performer. He's qualified, but he's a low performer. And I was talking to his boss, and I said, if he's a low performer, why can't they just help him out? And they're like, oh, whoa, because the client, right? They're my client, and then they have a client. Because the client has to complain about it. If the client doesn't complain about it, it's not a problem. And I was like, no, your team has a problem with him and they want to help him, but you're saying they have to go to HR and file a complaint. And it shouldn't get that far for somebody who's not involved in what you do on a daily basis to bring HR. And now it's official. But you're telling me that they can't just pull them aside and say, these are the things you need to work on. We're going to help you with those.
So
No,
you're
they can't
telling
do
me
that.
when you're on a mission of the Navy SEALs and something goes amiss, y'all don't get on the radio and call up Navy SEAL HR before you make decisions?
Yeah.
I definitely hear what you're saying. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, one thing I've found, Rob, and I've been running my own business now for 20
Yeah.
years. I've had employees work for me for 20 years. And what I've found is the more I stay out of their way, give them guidance, but then kind of stay out of their
Yeah.
way, the more productive the whole firm is. In fact, oftentimes, so I'll give you a good example. Last year, I got engaged early in the year
Congratulations.
not engaged to be married, but engaged in a legal matter. I've been married for 25 years.
Yeah.
Make sure my wife says that, but I got
Yeah.
engaged in a legal matter that took up a substantial amount of my time last year. And I told my
Yeah.
team in February, I said, I'm going to be spending a lot of time and mental energy on this.
Mm.
I need you guys to run things while I'm doing this. And I had one of my best years ever last year because
Yeah.
I let them go. And also I think, and it's one of the things actually on your website where you talk about some of the
Mm.
training you give
Mm.
in the corporate world, building trust. I
Yeah.
think when your team sees that you trust them, they work harder. I'll give you a really good example
Mm.
about this. Many years ago, over 2 decades ago, I worked at a different law firm. There were two
Mm.
partners. I was a young associate. One of the partners would sit me down every Saturday and he would go over in minute detail every single task I was supposed to do. And then we would have a meeting the next Saturday and he would bitch at me about what didn't get done. And then he would give me a whole nother set of minute tasks to do. The
Mm.
second partner, I walk into his office and he says, here's 30 cases. If you have any questions, ask me. Otherwise, let me know when you've successfully won all these cases. And here's the kicker. For the first partner, the only thing I did was precisely what he told me to do. For the second partner, I felt like he trusted me so much
Mm.
that I bent over backwards to do more than was expected
Right.
because I was like, he trusts me and I need to earn this trust. And
Right.
so I think, at least in my experience, I've seen leaders that say they trust their people, but their actions show that they don't.
Well, they micromanage them.
Or that's what I'm saying. Like if
Yeah.
you're
They micromanage them.
and the problem with micromanaging, by the way, is not just you're not showing that you trust your people, but if you're a leader and you're micromanaging, what you're basically saying is there's no reason to have these employees really. I mean, I tell my employees all the time, I have a rule in my office. Nobody's allowed to come to me with a problem unless they also offer a solution.
Yeah.
What I found is when you're in a subordinate role, oftentimes, and this applies to everybody, the default state is not to go the extra mile. The default state is to say, hey, Rob, we got a problem over here in this account or whatever.
Mhm.
And what I tell my people is I could hire anybody to tell me the problems. I hired you for your brain to help me
Yeah.
figure out the solutions. And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, their solutions are better than mine would have been. And it's
Yeah.
because they know more about what they're working on than
Mhm.
I do. And so trust is not just, some kind of pie in the sky, make everybody feel good and hug, and we're going to
Mhm.
do trust falls and all that stuff. Trust is like, even if you don't care about any of that stuff, trust makes your business better for a lot
Yeah.
of different reasons. So you're the CEO of a
Mhm.
consulting group, the Trident Group. You do a lot of presentations and put on a lot of things for the corporate world. How do you explain in the corporate setting the best way to build trust amongst team?
Well, I always say, and it doesn't go over off. I would tell you that I probably turn people off more than I turn them on, put it that way. Because I'm like, you need a catalyst,
Yeah.
right? You need something that's going to be detrimental to the team if they're not successful. And you can't do it with words. Right.
Yeah.
So you go to an HR meeting or a team meeting and you walk in there and I had these great ideas. Everybody's kissing up to the boss and it's all the stuff the boss wants to hear. Right. And this is what they do. This is what everybody does. I don't want to be known for saying something stupid. I don't want to do any of that stuff. And the problem is that you build it's not yes people, but you're not letting people fail.
Yeah.
You're not allowing them to see to understand their own vulnerabilities and what they can and what they can't do, what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So I would say that what I would do, and I tell them, if you want somebody to change, it's got to be a catalyst, right? You have a child. That's a catalyst for change. You become a parent, become, more loving or less loving, unfortunately. But your husband and your wife, that relationship changes because you had
Yeah.
the child. And
Yeah.
the lead up to that is all the changes you have for those months, right? That's a big one. Marriage, divorce, right? A death in the family. These are major things that causes change. And when you make a change in your life, find out you're going to have a heart attack. You change your diet. You think about it. If you sit around a room full of people and you go, "We're going to do change," it's like hearing a comedian at a comedy store. It'll last until you get to the water fountain, right? People are going to forget. They're going to make all these notes, all these great notes, with the capitalizations and then when
Yeah.
they get back, they won't know how to implement it
Yeah.
because they spent so much time with their heads down and not with their eyes up.
Yeah.
Right? You need to see the people in the room, and I'm going to build trust because we're going to do. And I don't believe in trust falls. I
Yeah.
I really don't believe in trust falls because it's an action for a direction that they told you. We're going to do trust falls. Okay. But I'm going to put you in a position where you're going to have to trust that person or your team's going to pay. And this is what it feels like, right? People that, well, it's the military. It's like, it's not the military. This is life. But the military understands. I said, look, understand one thing. When the team fails in the military, that team is probably going to die.
Yeah.
When you guys fail, people still die. You're just not aware of it because you have HR between you and them. Your company loses half its market share. And what do you do with the people? You give them a nice service package, and then you never see them again. You never do. What did they do? Are they still alive? Did they lose their house? You have no idea because you cut them off and they're done. Some people will survive, but a lot of people won't. So it's the same thing. You're basically ineffective, killing half your team because you're not professional enough and doing things that are going to help build trust with them.
Most maritime workers don't realize there's a deadline to file their injury claim. The longer you wait, the risk of losing your case grows. At VB Attorneys, we've recovered millions for injured maritime workers. We are experienced, aggressive, and dedicated. Your fight is our fight. Call VB Attorneys today for a free consultation.
What do you think, Rob, in terms of like the lessons you learned in SEAL Team 6? Where do you see, like, in the corporate world or the business world, the biggest things that SEAL Team 6 does to succeed in its mission that the corporate world does not? Where do you, in other words, like, where do you see the corporate world really lacking where SEAL Team 6 does a really phenomenal job?
Everybody at SEAL Team 6 knows what the mission is.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And here's I was going to say this to you earlier, and I say this all the time to the executives, to the warehouse workers, everybody. 90%, like for you, 90% of what you do is what you do, right? Of 100% of the things, the 10% that you don't do, you pass down to other people. But that 10% becomes their 90%.
Yeah.
And then they're working it because it's stuff that you can't do. You're like, okay, can you take care of this? It's 10% of what you do, but you're running a company, insurance, payroll, clients. It's all this other stuff that you're doing that they're not doing. But then when you pass up and down, it's 10%. It's a heavy 10%, but it's their 90%. And if they're going to pass it down to other people, it becomes their 10%, and it becomes that person's 90%. And that continues to happen because the weight of what you do outweighs anything that they're doing because it's for the value of the company.
Yeah.
And so if you balance your 90% is a lot of weight, but your 10% is still their 90%. And I try to explain to people, so, the CEO of a company is not worried about, I mean, they are worried about the assembly line, but it's not something that's in the forefront of them. It's not something I got to buy new equipment. Well, I got a facility person for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm not going to worry about it. But for you who work in that space every day, getting that assembly line up is really important. It's important for the entire organization, but I'm working down there on the floor. Got to get that thing up and run it. And I'm spending days on it. But me as a CEO, I'm not worried about it because I know that you're doing that 10% of stuff. I'll pay the bill, talk to the company, and then I'm going to move on. For you, it'd be for the same thing with clients. You get the client, you get the case, you figure it all out, and you pass it on to the guys while you move on to the next client.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately for this is a business leader, is that you're responsible for feeding everybody that's in that room. You're responsible for their houses, their cars, making sure they get paid, their 401s. You're responsible for all of that.
Yep.
And if you're not 100%, they're not worried about that. They're just worried about, did I get a paycheck or not? Am I getting a raise next year? Am I getting a bonus? I mean, they're not worried about it because they trust you, but you're working because you want them to have that. When you have that dinner at the end of the year every year and you buy them this nice steak, it isn't like they're going, well, I wish they would just give me the money instead. If you build a family of people, then it's not about just showing up and, I'll get the steak and I'll leave.
It's so interesting that you chose this particular topic because as I've been running this business for 20 years now. When I first started, it was just me and a partner. We did everything. Like, I'm sitting there in front of the computer, hammering out letters and briefs and doing the arguments and bringing in the business and talking to the bankers and making sure we had enough staples for the stapler and all that stuff. And I've realized over the past couple of years that that's not really my role. My role is, like you just said, I got to make sure that we have enough business coming in, number one. That's our oxygen. So we can pay the overhead and I can pay all my employees' salary and we can keep this thing going. I think another one of my most important jobs is making sure it's not doing the day-to-day hammering out the letters and stuff. It's making sure I have the right people in the right seats to do that work. Sometimes, Rob, I find myself, if I'm not sitting behind a computer hammering out briefs and letters and stuff like that, I'm like, what am I doing here? Am I not working hard enough? And I have to constantly remind myself that that's not a good use of my time. It's much better for my employees to do that type of work and for me to do the kind of work that I do, make sure we have good relationships with the bankers, make sure we have enough clients coming in, the marketing's good, the direction of the firm is good, any major decisions. Like my job is to think and to solve problems. And I think a lot
visionary.
Yeah, but a lot of leaders, I think, get too down in the weeds because they feel guilty if they're not actually, if you start a store selling cookies, it's probably not the best idea for you to be baking the cookies every single day. You should probably hire somebody to do that so you could do the marketing and make sure.
Right.
I mean, because if you could have the best cookies in the world, but if nobody knows about them, it doesn't matter. And so, so that's been a real revelation for me over the past couple of years. I mean, it seems like in the military, because of the clear demarcation between who's in charge and who's not, between the ranks, that would be less of a problem than in the corporate world. Do you find corporate leaders oftentimes don't have a real good appreciation of what their role should actually be in the business? And if so, what do you tell them about that?
I think it depends how they got there. So you can work on your business or work in your business. You can't do both.
Yeah.
I think everybody's worried about the bottom line. And sometimes a lot of leaders, not every leader, but a lot of them get, your number one job is to challenge the people that work for you. And then they know what to do. And they are set up to, if you hire the right people, they're set up to not challenge you, but to receive. I guess the best way I've heard this is that the CEO or owner of the company is a visionary. They have a vision of what they want to have happen. Then they have a board of directors or they have a direct reports that are strategic. They figure out how we're going to do it. And then they resource it with the people below them. They can resource of how to get it done. As long as you stay at the vision part of what's going to happen and you're pushing the team in that direction, the team is with you the entire time. They're spotting the problems and the issues that you may have, and they give you feedback for it. And you may or may not change direction. That's your prerogative. But if you don't do that, then your team's not going to be successful. Short term, you will. Long term, that's why family companies aren't passed down. Forget the statistic, but family companies aren't passed down. And then most of the companies that are successful today are doing something different than they were 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they look, hey, that someone said, hey, we need to change what we're doing. We're not losing market share. We're just losing. We can't produce that product for whatever. We lost our center, but we're doing something else. I was Nokia. You remember the company Nokia?
Yeah, sure. They used to make the really cool cell phones until
They
the
used to. Well,
iPhone
they
came
made
out.
well, right till the iPhone came out because they were like, no one's gonna. I don't know what they were thinking, but
I remember what they were thinking. I have a degree in computer science, so I was following this super close. They were saying nobody will ever type on a glass screen. You remember that? We used to have the Blackberries with the physical
Blackberries, yeah.
keyboards. Oh yeah. And people were like, nobody's ever going to type on a glass screen.
Yeah, and now they do. That's all they have.
Exactly. That's
Right?
all they have.
They own We Things, and they're in health devices now. I think that's the core of the company. I remember buying something there. I buy a lot of their products. I think they do a great job of the products they buy, but in 5 years, will they still be doing this? I don't think they will. I think they'll be doing something else. If you want to stay big and you want to stay, you got to be thinking about what's the vision of the company, what direction of the company going. And I don't recommend every company changes what they do. I'm saying that you got to figure out how you keep the lights on. And if you're losing market share, you got to change, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is this, and it's okay for leaders not to be okay. That this is a problem that I got to be perfect. It's like, no, there's a human part of you. I just went through something recently, and my staff was like, "Hey, just take it easy. We got it. We'll take care of it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, but I got to take no. You do enough. Just take a couple of days to rehab." I was like, "No, I could do it from home." And they're like, "No, because you're not the same. The product, you're not going to give us 100% of product if you're worried about your rehab as well. The rehab is more important for us. You'll be back in 2 weeks." And I was like, okay. It's just like, I got to let go. Yeah, let go. We got it.
It's interesting you talk about this, Rob, because I found that high performance driven people, oftentimes the thing they have the hardest time with is taking some rest. And so like I grew up, my father worked out every single day of his life. That was my example. I work out basically every single day. And the hardest thing for me is to take a day off. And at 52 years old, I need to take a day or two off and rest and recover, but it's difficult. And oftentimes I think leaders, by definition, if you're running a business or you're on SEAL Team 6, you're a driven person, just by definition, right?
Yeah.
And driven people don't like to be sitting around on the couch watching TV on Sunday. They, at least a lot of them, feel like they always have to be doing something.
Thinking.
Yeah, they always got to be thinking. Let me ask you this question. You've been in a bunch of different cool positions in the military. You've been around a lot of corporate executives, probably a lot around government types. You've probably seen some really good leaders and some really bad leaders and everything in between. If you had to choose the top 2 or 3 characteristics of a good leader, what would you say the top 2 or 3 characteristics are?
And good character traits, integrity would be one. I don't know if compassion, or is that a trait, would be number 2. It's not the knowledge of the product that you sell. And I'm sure you're a great lawyer, but your people don't follow you because you're a great lawyer. They follow you because you're a great leader.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not looking, I think that, and people, because I'm a SEAL, they go, yeah, he's a SEAL. But I mean, my staff, they never make reference to it, that I was a SEAL Team 6. They know that the company does leadership and team building, and they know that this is what we do. This is how we do it. And they're always trying to refine what we do. One of our clients is like, well, you guys you guys, you're the fastest. Your company turns around faster than anybody else that we work with if we make a suggestion to you, right? That's for them, for their specific company. It's like, yeah, because we're here to service the client. You can tell any one of my employees that work with me because they're part of the team, that you mention something and then they'll bring it back and go, hey, I heard this while we were there. And then we'll source it out and say, this is what you guys want. And then we'll redo whatever. It could be a couple of days between when they heard it, and we'll make a change to it the next time we do this, what program it is for, because we're there to serve. But my people know that, though. They know that that's the best approach to build a company. And I hope I'm answering your question correctly, but um, integrity is the number one thing, that they want to believe that you have their best interests in mind no matter what you do. You're thinking about them. They think you're thinking about them before you're thinking about the client. And I am. I'm thinking about them before I think about the client.
I am too. I am too. And it's amazing you'd say that. I've done probably 100 podcasts now. I've done podcasts with some spectacular leaders, and there's patterns. And the number one thing I hear about leadership is what you just said. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The number one trait of a good leader is a servant. Like I serve the people that I lead. I had a district attorney who set up this incredible program in a small Texas town, a guy named Dusty Boyd. I said, what great leadership that is. And he said, I know you keep talking about leadership, but I really think of myself as a servant more than anything.
Yeah.
And that really struck me. And I've heard that again and again and again, Rob. And I think
servant leadership.
Yeah, the problem is, I think, is some people get in a position of leadership and they feel like they're owed something, or they feel like, hey, now it's time, all these people are supposed to serve me. No, that's not the way to do it. And like you said earlier, it'll work in the short term, but in the long term, that kind of you're serving me leadership never works out.
Well, they're going to get their resumes ready.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they're going to do. Yeah.
You've developed a unique approach called the L365 approach. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Leadership 365 is built in another program called Leadership Under Fire. And what we'll do, it's actually a 1-year program where we put you through 60 hours of intense leadership team building training. There's some classroom, but most of it's outside, where we're doing team building events. We do a lot of fitness events. And so as a military man, you understand this, that you don't know what you're going to do. I guess the best way to say it, Tyson says, you don't know what's going to happen until you get punched in the face, right?
That's his famous line. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll have a team. We break them up into different teams, and there's a scorekeeping thing for it as well. But we put them in these, because I always say the leadership doesn't matter what your job is. Leadership is leadership, right? I'll use a reference of an airline pilot. And I know some people go, well, yeah, the flight attendants are great people. I'm sure they are. But if a flight attendant tells me relax, we're going to be okay, I'm not relaxed until the pilot comes over and says, a guy I never met, or girl, says, we're going to go up to 30,000 feet and we'll smooth it out and we're going to land in 25 minutes. Yeah. Because he instantly has my respect because he's a pilot. The flight attendant, not so much. I mean, that's just the way it is. I tell people all the time, it's like, that's just the way it is. So as a leader, I need to be the pilot of whatever I'm doing. So when my people understand what's happening, they understand that I have their best interest in mind and go back to servant leadership. When people go through Leadership 365, they're looking to me to know that they can trust what I'm going to do with them is going to make them better in the long run. I'm going to push them. And I always say that, look, you're coming here, you're 40%. I mean, you're 40%. You think it's 100%. And that's how you work. That's how you do your sales. That's how you do marketing. You work at 40%. You don't really work hard because you haven't been pushed to work hard. There's no metrics out there that's going to say, this person, to find out how they're driven to get things done. There's nothing out there that does that. You're good at what your job, you meet the quotas, and they're like, oh, they're working at 100%. Are they?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So I open that up to them through the course with different programs we're doing in this one program, the 70 hours. And we teach them, KPIs. We go over critical success factors, depending on the company. And we built all that stuff into the Leadership 365. And then once they get done with the program, they renewed, they know each other, they cross-pollination, the different members of the team all understand who the other people is, because quite often, and I call this, I forget where I read it, but the levels of communication. Level one is basically how you order food in a restaurant. Level two is a relationship where you're getting information back and forth, a little bit of information. Level three would be like a marriage, right? So if we're sitting somewhere in a crowd, I'm going to talk to the person I have a level three with before I talk to the person I have a level one with.
Yeah.
If I want to work with somebody, I want a level two or a level three relationship with them. Ideally, a level two and level three is too much because it's emotion, but I definitely don't want to work with a bunch of people where it's transactional.
Yeah.
Right. And a majority of time I see in these events that when they're outside their office spaces for a large corporation, everything's transactional. And that's where the rub is, right? They don't know how to talk to each other. I hear this because we listen to them. We don't listen to them, but we go to bars, you can hear them talking. At the end, we do a little fireside chat, and they're talking about, I never knew you were like that. That's what I hear so much. I never knew you were like that. That's what I hear the most from people that go to the program. I never knew, they're talking about one another. I never knew you had kids. I can sit 20 people in the room that have been working together for 15, 20 years and bring up a couple of things that they don't know about each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're in a reserve. I was in a reservist too. You're in the Army. Oh, where'd you go? And it's like, how long you guys been working together? Well, we pass each other all the time.
Meanwhile, on SEAL Team 6, I'll bet you knew, at least in your small unit, everything.
Well, you know everything. You know about their parents, you know about their mothers,
Yeah.
you know about somebody who died in their family, you know everything because it's not human, but it connects you to the people you are. Like some people say, well, that's PPI, personal information. You can't share that. Well, okay. Then you don't know them. You have a transactional relationship and nothing goes beyond that initial transaction. You're going to have to dig down a little bit deeper with the person to get there.
When I was in the Corps of Cadets, and they still do this today, they've been doing this for 100 years. When you're a freshman, a fish is what you're called, you're required to do something called whipping out to every upperclassman you've never met before. And that means you walk up to him and you say, howdy, sir, or howdy, ma'am. Howdy, Mr. Roy. My name is Brian Beckham. I'm a computer science major from Fort Worth, Texas. And then they say it where they're from and what their major is. And you get to the point where you literally know like almost everything about all these people, and you become super cohesive and tight as a team. Rob, we're running a little bit up against your time limit, but I have a question I really, really want to ask you. One or two final questions if you have a couple more minutes. Do you have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Final two questions. What is the most important thing that you feel like you've learned recently within the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years? What's something that you thought you were right about for a very long time that you've recently found out or you've rethought? Maybe think, I've learned something and I'm adapting a little bit. I'll tell you, for me personally, the answer to the first question is I learned about 5 years ago that all this stuff it's not about me. Like what you do for yourself is fine and all, but what you do for other people is what really matters. And so give us an example of like something that in your life within the last few years that you've discovered that you think is really, really important that you want to share with other people.
Well, I preach trust, right? All the time I teach trust, and I trust my team. And I used to say, I need you to operate. I need to operate like this. And so the oddities that happen in our program are this. And if I know you're here, I know where to come back to, right? I know where we're always going to be. I had an event. I have a 32-year-old female that runs everything for me. She's fucking phenomenal. Sorry, but she is phenomenal. I mean, just unbelievable. She calls me. We're leaving for one of the sites. We are going to do a water evolution. And I know she's great. She does all the research. And she has another guy that I trust. I've known him for 20 years. That he's working for her, right? Because she runs everything. And they call me up and say, hey, we need to, it's a water revolution. It's nighttime. It's cold. And I said, well, I'm on my way to the CEO. Just have everything ready when we get there. Because he wants to go in the boats. And she's like, I need to talk to you about the boats when you get here. And I was like,
uh-oh.
What? What? So I'm going to talk to you. I need 5 minutes when you get here. So I get out of the car. She walks right up to me because I need to talk to her. I said, I got to talk to the CEO. Whatever it is, what you're telling me, it can wait. Let me talk to him, get him ready to get in the boats. And I got done and she comes over and she says, her and the guy, they both come over to me and they said, we think you need to change the extraction point. Like I had 5 or 6 extraction points because I planned them.
Yeah.
I go, well, this is where the teams are going to be. If something happens, you're going to pull them out. So we were covered safety. So to think that the winds are blowing, and she gave me like what I would want to hear, and I'm like, I have extraction points. So what difference does it make? This is my water team.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, they can get out of one of the extraction points. She goes, you don't understand. The winds are really bad. And I was like, yeah, you should told me that like an hour ago. When did you guys find out? We're doing this. We're going to make it happen. She goes, Rob, I'm telling you that this is going to turn into a shit show.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's my specialty because I can handle a shit show.
Yeah.
She goes, okay, we'll be here to support you. No matter what you do, we'll be here to support you. We're 15 minutes into it. It turns into a shit show. I mean, literally, the clients don't know,
Yeah.
but the staff is like, they look at me like, this is what we're talking about. And I was like, look, I apologize. I was stressed out. And I do trust you guys. I just need to get this fixed.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to do to fix this? Because obviously my ego got, I was like, I was in front of the staff, like 25 people. Like obviously my ego got in the way of trusting you guys. I said, I'm 100% apologetic. I can make this work if it was a different day. That's what I said. But I don't want to try to make it work. I want to make sure the clients are taken care of, and I want to make sure you guys aren't overly tired or whatever. And I said, what do we have to work to fix this? And they said, we need to go out there with them and then fix it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to have like 40 people in the water. I said, well, tell me what you need to do. I'll support whatever your decision is. And they fixed it. We basically shortened the distance, pulled them into one of the extraction points, moved all the equipment to the extraction point. We're talking like, there's a 25-person staff that does the boat stuff and another 15 people that do with the logistics. It's like 40 people she's moving around to get them to where they're supposed to be. So one of the clients who's the observer says, who's that? And I said, well, that's Carrie. I call her the Red Devil. I said, he goes, why do you do that? I said, because she makes shit happen.
Yeah.
She goes, how old is she? I go, she's 32. She's 34 now, but I'm 35 now. And I said, he goes, you let her run everything? I said, I can't stop her. She's got a handle on everything. I said, I can't even get involved in it. He goes, what? And I go, she knows what she's doing. She knows what the mission is. She knows what has to be accomplished. And I said, she knows everybody on the team because she handpicked them. I said, I would just get in the way.
Nice.
After that, she runs all the evolutions. She briefs me, tells me, I give my input. She takes it and incorporates it because I put it in there. But she runs them all, and everything's been super safe since then. I haven't had that issue at all. And I think one of the things, as being a SEAL, right, there's certain things we're really good at, right? Water stuff we're really, really good at. Shooting we're really, really good at. But the people that were in those boats that she saw get into the boats, she goes, we have to make an adjustment because they're not going to make it. They're just too tired. Another thing what she's saying, they're just too tired to make the distance, because it's the purpose of that night evolution is not about paddling to a specific point. It's about what happens when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And we're not around, and you're communicating with each other. And it's supposed to be difficult because we want you to fight in the boat. We want you to argue with each other, because that's the last piece of, I'm holding on to myself in that boat. This is me. I'm going to be but when you're cold and wet, and you're out there with your team and you have to get to point A to point B, you're going to say shit to people because you want to get there for one reason or another. Whatever the motivation is for you getting there, you're all thinking we all have to get there. How do we work together to get there? If a person's not putting out, they're going to say something to them.
Yeah.
Right. If they're lost, if you're a bad leader, all that's going to come out while you're in that boat. So it's important that it's done right. It's important that that we don't add another element to it. So that's what I learned from for my staff. And that was 5 years ago. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and that was the first time it ever popped up that I didn't. I think I overstepped my bounds with my team because I thought I knew more than they did. I rack it up to just being my ego from being a SEAL.
You know what the great thing about that? I hope everybody that's in a leadership position was listening really careful to what Rob just said, because you just heard a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, one of the baddest ass groups of guys ever to walk the planet, tell a story about apologizing to his team, his whole team. He apologized. Hey, my ego got a hold of me. A lot of people, I think, mistakenly believe that shows weakness, Rob. What that tells me is you have deep strength. The fact that as a leader, you can tell your people, hey, I screwed this up. I messed this up. Y'all were right. I was wrong. That's the best kind of leadership there is. Because it's genuine and it's authentic. Ooh. So I hope everybody was paying real careful attention to that. Well, Rob, I know you're a busy guy. Before I let you go, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I have the website, www.trident-cc.com. But, on LinkedIn, I do I have these, I guess they're 45-second motivational things I do every day. It's on Trident, or it's on Rob Roy on LinkedIn, Trident-cc on LinkedIn, or Rob Roy on LinkedIn. And then you'll see the videos that pop. There's like 100 right now. I think there's close to 200 of them, where I do a motivational statement every day about, a bunch of topics, but they'll motivate you though. And then of course you can contact me at my personal email at robert.roy@trident-cc.com, or the website.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. One more question. Where can I get one of those cool jackets that you're wearing?
Our next event, I'll get you one.
Nice.
Send me your size. I'll make sure you get one. If you're small, I have one for you now, but if you're,
I'll send you a black camo VB attorney.
All right, that's swap.
Too. How about that? We'll swap. Yeah,
work.
we'll do a jersey swap. Yeah.
Okay, that works for me.
Hey, Rob, you're doing great work. Thank you for your service to your country. Thank you for the service to the people that you employ today and the customers that you lead. I thank you for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I know my listeners have too. So anyway, keep doing what you're doing, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man.